Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome to a new episode of Psi Games Talk. My name is Tyler, and I'm glad today to be joined by Julia Mossbridge. I'll just say a little bit about her, and then we'll have a great discussion. Hakeem's going to jump in a little bit as well, so very excited. So a little bit about Julia. Dr. Julia Mossbridge is an American cognitive neuroscientist, author, and educator who works on understanding and training of exceptional human performance, including Psi, notably precognition and presentiment. She's a distinguished fellow in human potential at the Center for Future of AI, Mind, and Society at Florida Atlantic University, member of the Lewis Innovation Council at the nonpartisan Stimson Center, affiliate professor in the Department of Biophysics and Physics at University of San Diego, and the co-founder and founding executive director of the nonprofit TILT, the Institute for Love and Time. I'd like to welcome Julia Mossbridge. Welcome, Julia. How are you?
Happy to be here. Happy to see you, and looking forward to talking to Hakeem as well.
Awesome. And we are looking forward to having you at the Psi Games. I'm just curious, what were your initial thoughts when you heard about something like the Psi Games, a platform where people were competing in these Psi events?
Well, last year I heard about Psi Games and I was slated to go until my husband got sick. So I'm really excited to go this year. I got very excited. I mean, this is basically bringing Psi into the mainstream by making it fun, by making it less closeted and, weird, more gamified, and bringing out the delight in it just seems like a really good idea. And then after I couldn't go but talk to my friends who went, I heard that was exactly what happened, and it was really, really fun. So I'm excited that it's going to happen again, and I hope it keeps happening for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. The atmosphere there was incredible. It's not like your typical Psi testing environment where you're closed off. You kind of have to get into a mindset. There was fans there, pom-poms flying around, and competitive nature in general.
And it made me wonder, though, also, like, for some people that might be really not conducive, and for other people it might be really supportive. And so I made me wonder this year if we could have like a quiet room for quiet competition for people who that's not conducive for, but they still want to compete. So anyway, that was a thought I had. But I don't know what you guys think about that.
Yeah, I think one of the cool things and really good approaches is that, we have people there who are parapsychologists and who have done a lot of experiments and work in the field, and taking that advice of how to improve, the MindSight mask or the remote viewing protocols of what we use, or different things just like you're talking about. And then, being the bar maybe that's set as sort of like the testing platform, as more people start coming into it, as setting the bar, some sort of bar, is like a professional way of testing and competing.
Yeah, I think that's great. And, I think eventually it'll probably evolve into some kind of a certification or something, which, would be really cool. But I think the sooner that we can, I guess what I mean to say is the more that we can continue to just make it fun and explore, these are going to be the juicy years. Like, these are the creative years.
Right. Well, you've worked with the telepathy tapes, and I feel like there's a sort of surge happening because, the work in parapsychology, I think when you look at just the science of it, can get a little bit boring, just from trying to present it in a way that can be appealing to the public. But I think, like you're saying, there seems to be a little bit more energy, and even like marketing. I've always said like the Psi field could use great marketing. So what are your thoughts though on these next couple of years and what you see in Psi?
I think I agree that the Psi field could use great marketing. And part of that, I think, will be bringing in the way that women do things in Psi. So right now, we have this sort of I think fairly masculine approach of like, go, this competitive approach. And I think that on average, women do things differently. And I think that's fine too. And I think you need both. And I think making Psi seem less like. So here's something about marketing. There's one way to market that that has been used a lot, which is this: how can we get people to feel a little bit afraid? You know, it's especially used in the Psi field. I don't feel like Psi Games does this, but I feel like Psi Games is rising out of this sort of way of like, oh, so-and-so is super special because they can do this Psi capacity, but watch out because they can
Right.
Right? Feels to me like we're going to be moving towards an approach of, here's this powerful human skill that kids could do, men could do, women could do, anyone could do at any age. And it could be used in all different ways. It could be used to, stop terrorism. It could be used to, make money. It can be used to help people, find missing people or something. So it's like we're at the beginning of the Olympics, which feels to me like the beginning of the Olympics, when there was this idea of, let's bring together people from all over and make competing for excellence not about being thrown to the lions, which was the sort of old way of doing it, but instead about really striving for something outstanding. It feels like Psi Games is moving in that direction, and it feels like that's the kind of marketing that Psi needs. And so it's more like, let's open ourselves up to these powerful human traits, which, by the way, is not a good marketing tagline. Like, no one, it's much better to not think I'm not a good marketer, obviously. But I think that the movement, there can be positive marketing taglines that give that feeling.
Do you see any issues with, because I know in parapsychology too, when they were, starting the real research, even with like the Rhine Research Center, that we got into these, we have to find the savants or these super psychics. Do you see any issue with that? Or do you see it more as like, it lifting the field up is not necessarily we have to find the best psychics and then they are representative of Psi, but more so of like using the competition and the people who are skilled itself as a platform?
Yeah, I'm going to use this question to point out my new book, because I talk about this in my new book. So have a nice disclosure.
Oh, nice.
In the latter half of the book, I talk about my experience in a gifted program where part of what they were doing is searching for people with really good Psi capacities. They're also looking for IQ and other cognitive traits that were, outstanding. And there was an urgency about it and an unethical nature of it, because they didn't ask our parents or our permission. They just did all sorts of stuff. And a lot more and more people are starting to recognize that that is not okay. And that urgency came from somewhere. It's this old urgency, I think, from the UFO legacy program of, it's for the future of humanity or the future of this country or some kind of mix of those things. We have to find the gifted performers in these areas. That urgency that also drove everything underground for decades came from a place of people, I believe, thinking they knew thinking that they knew it was the right thing to do. They were certain that this was the right thing to do, and to do it secretly. And they were certain that they had to do it secretly. And that led to suppression of Psi as a field, I believe, which I think was unethical as well. And yet it was based on some kind of calculation that I don't understand. Maybe they thought aliens are invading us and we need good Psi performers to help. Maybe they thought there's a human-alien hybrid program. We need to check everyone out and see if they're an alien. I mean, I frankly do not know.
Yeah.
But I know that it happened, and it may have been happening as recently as yesterday. I mean, I don't know that it stopped. And I think that that is the old way of doing things. Be urgent about it, be secretive about it, suppress everything having to do with it, and then put a lot of attention on it as if, no, we would never do that because it's bogus. We're going to spend a lot of time and attention on this thing that we're saying we're not doing. That's the old way of doing things. And I think that Psi Games is the new way of doing things, openly, with a focus on exploration. And there will be people who are gifted performers at every possible skill you can think of. And there are people who will be gifted performers who will work in one environment and can't work in another environment, or can work with one goal but can't work with another goal. And so the only way you find that out is if you open it up to everyone and you sort of say, let's see what your way of doing things is. And people get to meet each other, and they get to do things willingly under their own volition. So that's why I'm on the advisory board at Psi Games, because I think it's really important to do things differently.
Right. And you mentioned a lot of what you were talking about reminded me recently, last couple of years, there's been this story within the UFO community of the psionic program, or psionic.
It's the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think of when you hear that word psionic? Because a couple of years ago, just for me, when I heard psionic, I would think about our genetic sort of evolution of psi ability, like ESP. But now, what the psionic has been recently referred to as intentional use of psi abilities to reach out to non-human intelligence, or UAP. So how do you see that word or process or new kind of?
I think it was fascinating. So my understanding is the first use of psionic in that context is with Jake Barber in that conversation with Ross Coulthart, the first open use. That's when I first heard it. Did you hear it before that, or is that when you first heard it too?
No, the only other person I've heard it from was Alex Tannis, and he used it in that regard of genetic evolution. Yeah.
Oh, so he used it as the genetic evolution. That's interesting.
Yeah, like we would become a psionic race where we would have six senses, and ESP would be that sixth sense.
And that's all since 2018, let's say, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So before that, the only place someone schooled me on this, because before that I thought that Jake Barber made up the term, but it turns out it was in Dungeons and Dragons as one of the traits. Like you could have psionic traits. So I think that's a pretty great provenance of that word. Hey, Hakeem.
Hey, how are you?
Hi, good to see you. I think that coming from Dungeons and Dragons is perfect. I think it can be applied to whatever. People make up language all the time, so we can apply it to whatever we want. But I think it's broader than just calling in UFOs. I think you can call someone a psionic asset who is a telepath with other humans, or is a person who has really good psychokinetic abilities, or someone who can pray and produce healing in a person. In other words, I think if we're going to use the term, I think it goes beyond calling in UFOs.
Right. Absolutely. Well, Hakeem, thanks for jumping in. We just went a little bit into Julia's background, a little bit too into the Psi Games and how she's coming on the board, the advisory board, and getting into a little bit into psionics and precognition, not too much so.
Yeah, and I don't know. Is it called the advisory board? I forget what I'm on. Is it?
Yes.
You call it the advisory board? Okay, yeah. Everyone calls it something different. So.
Yeah, I know, and you're very highly sought after. You're on everything right now.
Well, thank you.
Including, I heard you were doing your own event coming up in several months.
In October, I'm with a group of other people. I'm leading a women's conference in cognitive science, AI, robotics, and consciousness. And so everyone can attend. It'll be called Wielding Her Power Mind, Mind. But it will feature talks by women who don't get as heard as I do in the field. So the idea, it was a response to Epstein and multiple people in the field being jerks to women. So I mean, jerks is putting it lightly, but we'll just say jerks.
You know, that was one of the things, and Tyler can attest to this, that every time we are on a meeting, on one of our executive team meetings, and we're looking to bring somebody else on to as a speaker or something or whatever, I'm always like, I really would like for it to be a woman, and I would like, I would like to have more, gender diversity, and like just have, that really represented strongly. And so it was on the forefront of my mind this year to make sure that whoever we got as a host to speak on stage was definitely a woman.
Do you know who you're getting?
Yeah, her name is Ann Palmer, and her father was one of the Tuskegee Airmen, which is amazing.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, she works with Dr. Joe Dispenza and his group, as well as heart math and things of that nature. So she's coming on board. Her mom was one of the first lead trainers, or I think the lead trainer for Head Start when it started. The program started many years ago. So
wow. She's
got a really strong history in education, and her family, she comes from a family of, what pioneers, I should say. Even she was one of the head speakers for the Women's Basketball League.
That's awesome. She's a Black woman, I'm guessing.
Yes.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's going to be great.
Yeah, it is. It's going to be really great. And then we have so many more powerful women like yourself who really represent the field and, are doing amazing things that'll be there as well. So that was really something that I wanted to do. So, yeah.
Good for you. I think it's so important. And just this whole field, I was just telling Tyler how I really sort of think it has been a mistake, and I think it's a mistake that you all are remedying with Psi Games, but it has been a mistake to shroud everything in secrecy and do everything in this closeted, sort of suppressed way, because all sorts of damage comes from that. All sorts of shame comes from that. All sorts of intergenerational trauma comes from putting things in the shadows that actually don't need to be in the shadows. And I feel like the Psi Games is part of the healing of that. So,
well, thank you. Yeah, I think, there's this kind of two-way street to that. Like there may be some things that people put in, held behind doors or in secret groups because they felt like for instance, certain traditions, wisdom traditions that I was in, they're initiates, and they want to initiate you to make sure that you're safe and that you can handle what they're teaching, and that, your character is good. And then there's this other aspect, the darker aspect, which I feel is really just about power, and it's like, I want to hold that power and retain that power for me or my group or whatever. And therefore, we're the only ones who can handle it, and nobody else can handle it but us. And so,
that's a mistake.
Yeah, that's the part that I'm just like, okay, yeah, I definitely don't, feel that that's okay. And, so I'm glad to see that we're opening up in this way. It seems like there's a lot of really cool things happening right now. That's allowing us to share and be open and really move outside of this world of secrecy or control, and I'm sure you as a scientist know this as well. I've come up against this really interesting dynamic where some people on one side want me to be like completely open with the Psi Games, and like everybody can come in and do what they're doing and be on stage. And I'm like, okay, well, we still want to have some like scientific, aspect to it, like I don't want it to be really restricted, but I also don't want it to be so wide open that, we can't even, see where we're headed. And then, I've met a ton of scientists who are like, you can't do it like that. It's got to be, this way, that way, separate the players, put them in another room, have all of the conditions like just perfect. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I can't do that. I'm trying to make this open to people to come and enjoy and be inspired and motivated. So I have to find this fine balance, and that's really tough to do. But it seems like we've been doing a pretty decent job for the first last year. So
that's what I hear. That's what I hear from people. And also, by the way, kudos to you for stating that you want to be more open and not do that hold on to power thing, but at the same time, you want to have boundaries. There's a difference between, as you know, but I guess I'm just saying this to say this, that there's a difference between having boundaries that keep a community healthy, right? Like you're not going to let people come in who are like, the way we do Psi is we explode weapons. Just like, that's not going to be within the rules. But so it's like having boundaries that keep people healthy and safe, and at the same time sharing power, so that people can, if they feel like they would like to contribute in this way, they can talk with you about working on the security team or whatever it is. It's not this cloistered sort of culty, we have the power and you don't kind of situation.
Exactly. I think that's how we are going to move forward. And I love what you guys were saying earlier about when I was in the backstage, just the names psionic and psionic not being just reserved for like this kind of like either Dungeons and Dragons or militaristic use or something like that, or just UAPs, but really this kind of global awakening, for everyone. And even if you use that term, it's not one that, because it has baggage with it, I think we could possibly come up with something else, but people are using it, so it's okay. And I think that that's good too. But I definitely see that we need to, and you and I have had this conversation, surround whatever we do very strongly with some ethical foundation and understanding, because I've been playing with this theory, which I think is really interesting. And, it's just a theory. It's just an idea that popped into my head not long ago. But, we go through this transition where we come into this on this planet, and a lot of people are finding that kids have a really strong affinity towards these different type of abilities. And at some point they kind of lose it for a while, some of them, not all of them. And then it kind of, as we become adults, it'll reemerge, or maybe we have a moment and then we start looking for it. Some people keep it, but it seems like a lot of people either shut it down or it gets shut down. And I was thinking to myself the other day, and I was saying, well, maybe that is part of the learning process, that maybe there's some sort of energy out there that has that as a balance. They create that balance that when you're young, you're learning, you're growing, you're learning how to work within your society, you're learning about our social contracts, all that stuff. And then, as you get older and the difference between right and wrong, then maybe that's when it can emerge again, where you can start to be able to use it positively. Because a kid with psychokinetic powers who doesn't really have a good grasp of their own emotional state and regulation, that could be like, if you just gave my 14-month-old, if she picks up a knife on the floor, that's going to be a problem. It might be a problem for her, and it might be a problem for other people. It's because she doesn't know the damage it can do. She doesn't understand, oh, this hurts people and I shouldn't do that. She's just swinging it around, having a good old time, and that could be very dangerous. So then when she gets old enough to understand how to use it responsibly and so on and so forth, and we teach that, then, oh, okay, here, make your sandwich, or, I'm going to give it to you so you can cut a piece of meat or something like that. So maybe that the universe kind of already has that mechanism, that buffering mechanism built in to kind of like say, hey, we're going to have you come in, expand it, slow you down a little bit, and then give you the opportunity to open back up once you have an understanding of what it means to, or once maybe even us as a species recognize what it means to really use this as in a ethical way, a moral
Love
way.
that.
So.
That I get that we're talking about a theory and we're speculating wildly, but I just, but I really like that theory. and I would suspect that's part of the design, but also it gets a little messed up when we have a social stigma. So in our culture, we have this stigma around it. So you get things like poltergeists related to, puberty, when there's so much tension about this, that if there's lack of understanding culturally that this is, okay, now we're going to put this to bed and it's going to come out later. And so it has to be sort of divorced from the kid, this capacity. And then you end up with these poltergeists. I don't know. I'm just adding to this theory that there's an interplay with stigma in a culture that can make these problems with a developmental system that's really beautiful. Like what you described as a developmental system that's really advantageous and beautiful. But if you have cultural stigma, then it could get suppressed or altered in weird ways that end up it's like, I remember a friend of mine who was a clinical psychologist, and he wrote this book before he died, and it was about parenting. And his big point was like, there's this genius plan of development in the kid, and we keep kind of messing it up because we get afraid that there isn't a genius plan for development. And so we said, it's like we decide that every kid needs to have braces on their legs, and their legs grow in a weird way as a result. And then we say, see, they needed braces. But like their legs would actually, for most people, would be fine without the braces. So it's like we get into these habits. So it reminds me of the habit of telling our children, oh, that's magical thinking. Oh, you're making it up. That's your imagination. And then that comes out in these weird ways that they can't claim. And then so it's a ghost or it's a poltergeist. Have you ever talked to John Carruth about this?
I haven't talked to him about this particularly, but, he and I and Tyler, we're all in North Carolina. And Tyler lives really close to him, actually.
I think he would be a great one to talk to about this, because he has talked to families where there's poltergeists, and he has told me what really helps is to get everyone meditating and just kind of like,
Yeah,
it's like an acting out of that energy.
I think what you're saying is beautiful. And again, let's keep prefacing it, because somebody's going to watch this on YouTube and be like, oh, they're not science oriented. We are speculating. And I think speculation and hypothesis is obviously a part of the scientific method. But then there's all this other stuff you have to do. And we're just in this, let's bounce that back and forth some ideas. But when I think about, so I didn't realize that I had PTSD until I was in the Himalaya mountains on Naked and Afraid. And I was like...
Wait, you were naked in the Himalaya mountains?
Yeah.
Wait, can you just briefly describe that?
What's there to describe?
I mean, the afraid part, I totally get. The naked part, was that on purpose?
Yeah, it was a show. Where the challenge was to see if you can survive 3 weeks in the Himalaya mountain. Well, 3 weeks in the wilderness with no food, water, shelter, or clothing, or any of that stuff. And
like a Survivor, like a reality show.
Yeah, it was a reality show, and I was in the Himalaya mountains in India, and I had this huge, massive awakening, and it was a confrontation, or an awakening or understanding that I had PTSD from my time at war and being in the service. And one of the things that was challenging for me is that my job in the Army was PSYOP, and so then I'm the special operator working in Special Operations Forces, and we are the PSYOP people. We are the people who understand how the mind works. So of course I would never have any psychological ramifications, because I get it. I know how.
Yeah, you're the one who's the expert on this.
Yeah.
Of course, you're the one who's most vulnerable.
Yeah. And
Whoops.
so, yeah, basically that's exactly it. So under the surface, this program, or these challenges and struggles that I was having, that I was suppressing, were still manifesting in all these different ways. And so we see that for people who may not have been in that type of scenario, but have had panic attacks or know somebody who has panic attacks, quite often when you talk to that person, they will not understand why they're having a panic attack. Like,
Absolutely.
I don't understand. I'm doing all the things. I go on walks every day. What is happening in my chest? Am I having a heart attack? Then the doctor says, no, you're having a panic attack. They go to counseling and they realize like something that happened to them like 10 years ago is still poking at them until it finally just had this massive thing. So we see that this idea of suppression can still have this, it can affect you in all these different ways, which reminded me of your story about what you were saying about poltergeist, and this idea that it could still, these abilities can manifest in different ways if you try to keep them down, or especially in a negative way, and if you're suppressing them in this negative way. And
Wait, can I ask you a question?
Yes, please.
Did you get frostbite?
No, oddly enough, I didn't get frostbite, and it was 32 degrees at night and 60 degrees during the day.
Okay, so that's not too bad.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. But me and my partner built an amazing shelter. And we basically just stayed in that thing. We built a fireplace on the side of it, and we just was in there doing that. But that was the start of some really strong changes in my world, in my life. And
so how do you think,
that.
Can I ask like that? So when you I'm sorry, I don't know if you want to talk about this. I'm fascinated by this. When you had that recognition of holy cow, I was the smart one who was controlling other people's minds, but now I have to control my mind and I can't because I have PTSD. I mean, that was a paraphrase. Correct me if that is not.
Okay, no, it's pretty good.
Okay.
It's like you're a doctor or something.
Well, not that kind of doctor, but okay. But I have had, PTSD from stuff myself. When you had that recognition, was it accompanied with a sense of love for yourself?
I think that it was the greater love, the greater truth that, that I'm not perfect, that I'm connected to a lot of others. I'm connected to everything. Yeah. There was so many different emotions and things that happened, but when I came out of there, I did feel a greater sense of love.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that you should say that. Like that was and I had less compassion, I guess. I had a lot of compassion on me and what was going on with me, but I had less compassion for, and this, I was about to say, can I curse on here? But it's our podcast. The bullshit of the social contract, the way we have it set up, So I came back, I took 2 weeks off from work, and then I went back to work, and now I'm like in my office, and my office didn't have any windows. And then I'm like looking at the bills, and I'm like looking at all that stuff. And I was like, what are we doing? What is happening right now? Like I'm trying to pay these bills, and I'm in this office, and I recognize I just came from what truly mattered, which is I needed water, I needed shelter, I needed to take care of my partner. And the only other thing that truly mattered over all of that was just love for everything and everyone, and understanding that there was this deep connection with everything. And then I come back, and all that just felt immediately constrained to me spending most of my day thinking about how I was going to solve these BS problems that had to do with me just being a part of the system. How do I pay my bills and pay the taxes and run the class and do this and get new people in the door so we can sign them up? Like all of this stuff that really, I was like, how did I get trapped in this? How does anybody get trapped in this? And how I don't even feel good anymore. I don't feel like this very, and I don't want to say divine being as though I'm sounding egotistical, like I'm something special, but I was awakened to this idea that I was a divine being. And then I didn't feel that way when I came back to the world. I felt that's who I truly was. But when I came back to the world, I felt the world, or this reality that I'm living in, was constraining that again, like trying to put me back in the box so that I can work as a cog in the wheel.
Go back to prison, please.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. Well, the divine being thing, I mean, that's more speculation, but that's my experience too. But just because you recognize that you're a divine being doesn't mean other people aren't divine beings. In fact, when you're in that state and you recognize that you're a divine being, you also simultaneously recognize that everyone's a divine being.
Yeah.
So it's not like you're saying I'm a super special divine being. It's like, look, people, this is how we all are,
Yeah.
Are you going to put that in your book? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, at some point. Not the book that I'm writing for the Psi Games, to tell people about the Psi Games, but I do have a book that talks about some of my journey, most of my journey, and the things that have happened that were very miraculous. Like, there was no mistake. I was on that mountain in that forest, and that was made very clear to me through validators that was sent to me by the great beyond or whatever. And so, so I definitely do. I have plenty of stories like that I think I need to get out and put out into the world. But ultimately, what you're saying and what you just said about divine beings and all of us being that is really what I'm trying to accomplish with the Psi Games, And when I say I, it means me as a steward of the Psi Games, because truly what I feel, and Tyler is probably like falling asleep because he heard this so many times, is that there's something working through me. And that's very evident about how many of the amazing people who have just like gravitated into the field of helping with the Psi Games and us working together to make this thing a success and to bring it to fruition. And I'm just like, yeah, this is, things I didn't even know I needed, or things I weren't even asking for. They just show up, and it's, whoa, okay, yeah, I didn't realize I had to fill this tire with air that was flat. But now I have, now not only do I know I need to do that, but all of the tools and everything I need to make it happen just appeared like magic. And, and it's like, wow, this is really cool to see. So, yeah, I had that awakening, and now, like you said, I'm seeing that we are all of that, and I want to help usher in a way for people to really experience that in a very deep way, so that we can start this process and growth. And we have a Psychokinesis course going on next week. And one of the biggest things about the course that I wrote in the manual was specifically that it has a whole chapter on why learn psychokinesis. And the real reason is one of the true aspects of that is the outcome that if you really get to experience this, you recognize that you are a part of everything, and everything is a part of you, and you're all interconnected. And that really is truly the greater lesson there, is that if I'm bending this spoon, or if I'm, able to engage with this piece of technology and this random number generator and influence it in some way, then wait a minute, I thought there has to be some connection there, and that breaks through whatever boundaries you might have in your mind, I think, and it really opens that up, well,
people. Everyone I talk to who does psychokinesis says that what it's about, when it works, it's because you have forgotten that you're separate from this thing, right? You are.
Yes.
So that's an experience of self-transcendence, which is, unconditional love is one of the big self-transcendent experiences. There's others, but they all kind of are like these unity experiences where you kind of forget about boundaries. It doesn't mean, it's funny because in the case of unconditional love, you can actually have really good boundaries. You could say like, okay, this doesn't work for me. I unconditionally love you, but your behavior doesn't work for me. So we're going to have to live separately or whatever. But that's a boundary in like space-time. But the boundaries that are sort of outside of space-time that aren't about that are transcendent, those are the ones that just go away, I think, with psychokinesis. And I think it's so you're kind of, I think with psychokinesis, this is my theory again, total speculation, very difficult to test. But my theory is that people are sort of going out of space-time, kind of around the rules, to connect with, to realize that there already is, to acknowledge the connection that is already there with whatever it is that they're working with.
That's deep. I love it.
Cool.
Tyler, I'm gonna capitalize on this conversation because I love talking to Julia, but you got to jump in at some point.
Oh yeah. Well, we had a great discussion in the beginning, so I'm letting you guys cook right now.
Well, so I have an observation, which is that, you talked about the social contract, Hakeem, and one of the things I think you all are doing with Psi Games is sort of inching towards a new social contract, because one of the side effects of suppressing and making secret people's capacities for psychic performance is that you end up having a group of people who can only work for certain people. Like they can only work for the federal government, or they can, right? Or they can only work for these particular kinds of scientists. And so they're very constrained. And so their salaries are constrained and their options are constrained. And when there's a lot of fear and stigma and, maybe that they're doing the devil's work mixed in with that, then it makes it hard for them to go find work elsewhere. And it feels like, in a way, you're doing this big, like, labor movement sort of activity where you're saying, look, there are these people who could do these things, and we want opportunities for them to be, like, completely reframe the economy.
It's good that you said that, because one of the biggest things we have faced is this pushback that we are trying to, it doesn't help that I did work for the government at one point in time, and I had a very, a hot topic word job, and people were like, oh, you're just trying to identify psychic people so you could steal them and, and put them in, wisp them away in your government thing. And I'm like, no, that's not what we're doing. And they're like, well, what are you doing? And I said, well, one, I'm trying to help people, understand their true potential. And then the other is really, we want to unify people. And it's, one of the foundational techniques and principles of an abuser is divide and conquer, and to isolate, And so if a person is in their basement with these abilities, thinking that they're somehow like safe because, I'm not with the crew, the group of people who are really loving and caring, very rarely does a person do well in isolation, one. And then two, no, you're actually more vulnerable. If you're with people who love you, who care about you, who want to build community with you, that starts to break down all of this fear and all of these negative social contracts and things that these people put in place, are these power structures to control us. Yeah. So if I'm the Sith, and I'm like, I want to be in control, then one of the greatest ways to make that happen is to start creating ways for people to stay separate and be afraid to come together. And really us coming together and just being in each other's biofield and being in each other's resonant energy will allow us to expand faster than me just hanging out in my basement, practicing
trying to control
PK.
The world. That's right. So if you were actually trying to do a psyop with Psi Games, you're doing a horrible job of it, because because the first step would be to develop an in-group and an out-group. And say that those other people are bad and this is why we should fear or hate them, or both. And you're doing the opposite. And also the other thing is you're doing it all in public. And so when a whole room of people gets to see that someone is particularly good at a particular psi task, that makes it much harder for, government goons to come in and scoop them away and put them in a, underground bunker, because there they are.
Yeah.
So I think it's, in fact, if there's any psyop here, it's on the cognitive infrastructure side or the cognitive security side. In other words, making us more resilient to psyops.
Mm, mm. Yeah, yeah. I love that you said that. And that really is. And as we continue to grow, and I get it, there's so much that has been done to us as a people, when it comes to these power structures, primarily sometimes governmental, sometimes secret, whatever groups or whatever, that it's just instilled a lot of fear. And so even though many of us that we talk about love and compassion and caring and unity, still some of that is still, that poison is still in there,
Yeah.
it may, and so us coming together to try to siphon that out so that we can really embrace one another. And I think, here's another one, here's going down Tyler's lane. If we were to say, quote unquote, that non-human intelligences are a thing, I've had my experiences, so I have my opinion, and that some of them are pretty advanced in this knowledge. I think that they in some ways may be waiting for us to kind of get through all of that poison and that fear and all that stuff. It becomes really tough. I mean, even if you take it on a human level, like back home and some of the places that I grew up, there are some gangbangers, right? And so where I am now, it would be hard for me to have a conversation where a person is that just thinks controlling the block and selling drugs is the thing. So I'd just rather not have that conversation, unless they're in a place where we can communicate. Maybe we meet at a youth center or somewhere where, they want to learn and I want to help, or vice versa, but if they're just out there content with what they're doing and they might have an idea there's a different way, but that's where they are and they want to be there, then it's really tough to have that conversation. And I think maybe that's what some of these NHI are probably like watching, like, yeah, they're getting there.
It's interesting because I think of NHI as our future selves. I don't know how, and so I feel like you can even put off the idea of like NHI as aliens and just ask, do we want to be kind to our future selves? Like even that question is valid regardless of NHI. And if we want to be kind to our future selves, every generation needs to reduce the amount of shame and trauma and twisted behavior so that we can move towards the light. And it works. I mean, it's happening. Like you're teaching us, Hakeem, another way. You're teaching by showing us another way of handling this issue. That's different from the legacy program way. And it's really powerful. And I think the generation that comes after you will learn from you and then do it even more. So it just takes generations for us to move towards the recognition of we can work through the darkness like going through a tunnel. We don't have to decide that the darkness is the way. The darkness can't show anyone the light. The only thing that can show anyone the light is the light, and so the darkness can't guide. It can just become a habit, or it can become a belief that it will give you power, even though, by the way, it won't. So yeah, I'm just very excited about what you're doing, and I think that's beautiful. And I think it reminds me what you said about going to talk to gangbangers and how you would need like a place to do that. It made me think that might be something that you end up doing. We put Tilt, the Institute for Love and Time, the nonprofit that I founded in 2019 with Wolfram Alderson. We created a technology called Time Machine. You can find it at timemachine.love. It's basically an simple audio journaling app where you talk to your future self. And it has apparently made really positive changes, especially in people who have had lots of childhood trauma. I kind of made it for myself because I had my own childhood trauma, but we tried it out in Cook County Jail with 13 men in Cook County Jail, mostly Black, some white, in Chicago. And we did it for 6 weeks. And they asked for a 2-week extension on the program. And what we were doing in that program is teaching them bending spoons. We were teaching them the power of their mind.
Yeah.
We taught them about love over time with the app. We taught them about precognition, remote viewing. And I wonder if that's a direction you're going to go, because you sometimes remind me of Christian Piccolini. Do you know him?
I
that
don't.
guy?
Well, let me
So he
write that
wrote-
name down.
Yeah, so he wrote this book, White American Youth. He was a skinhead in the Chicago area. I grew up in the Chicago area, so I had heard of him. He was a skinhead Nazi guy. And he had a change of heart in his 20s. And he then started working with people in white supremacist and Nazi groups to help them feel loved, because he had an experience of feeling loved and realizing this is what he was looking for. But it wasn't going to happen in that environment because there was too much hate. And so he started connecting with people and bringing them out of the movement. And anyway, I think he might be a good person to talk to.
That's pretty deep. Yeah, I'll look that up when we get off, because I think that's really beautiful. I did have a question for you about your time in remote viewing and how you got started. And then you've since developed your own, or, methodology of how you do remote viewing.
Like everybody.
Yeah, which is very, well, I'll let you tell the story instead of me trying to identify it.
Okay, cool. I only have a few more minutes, but I can condense this story. I was working on the book with Teresa Chung called Premonition Code, and she said, I really want to teach people how to do precognition in the book. And I said, well, the only way to do that is to teach them precognitive remote viewing, because there's the most known about that. And she said, great, teach them precognitive remote viewing. And I was like, oh, I think I have to learn precognitive remote viewing then, because I'm going to write that section in the book, and I don't know how to do that. I'm naturally precognitive, but like I wouldn't know how to teach someone how to conjure it up. And so I went to go to John Vivanco's right hemispheric course in precognitive remote viewing, remote viewing, transdimensional remote viewing systems. He started it with Prue Calabrese, who became Birdie. And the reason I went to him was because he had been a Zen monk for a while, and I could tell his thinking was very clear and very compassionate. And he also favored non-militaristic words. So instead of target, he had taskings. There were some other things that I forget that he did differently. Hello. That really appealed to me. And he was really open to the idea of love being involved and different kinds of dimensions. And so I learned from him how to do remote viewing and did a lot of practice. And then I wrote up examples in the book of that early days stuff. And then I learned from, oh gosh, I can't believe I'm forgetting his name, CRV viewer, Lynn Buchanan. I learned from Lynn Buchanan, and that was phenomenal. I learned sort of the more military way of CRV. And I learned a lot about my own capacities there. That's when I realized I was actually pretty good. Because one time there was a target every week, and there was a target of the week, and I was practicing on old targets of the week. And I had really gotten a clear picture, and everything was very clear. But I went to the target, and it was so off, and I had never had the experience of being that off. So I looked at the target that it was supposed to be, and I looked at the top of the page, and I realized they had confused the numbers. And so I emailed Lynn, and I said, this isn't the right target for that week. And what is the right target? And he's like, you're the only person who ever noticed. And I'm like, great. And then I found the right target, and I matched, and I thought, oh, I could do this, This is something I could do. But what I wanted to start was a completely precognitive and version that's a framework or a protocol for wrapping any kind of remote viewing in except there's two differences. So however you learn, whether it's Hawaii Guild or CRV or whatever it is, you can take that, or transdimensional systems, and you could come into, or extended remote viewing, anything. You can come into this framework of operational precognitive remote viewing. It has, you said two, it has three differences in terms of the framework. One is it's operational. So there's always a goal that actually helps someone in the world, whether it's a client or whether it's someone on the team who needs help with something. Because I really see that, except during the vetting process when I'm vetting people from those capacities, and even then, people on the team often need help. And so need really turns on psychic capacity. And that's actually something I think we should bring into Psi Games, is have like need-based Psi. Maybe everyone puts, a little note into a hat that says, I would want people to pray for my knee, which is, hurting, or whatever it is. And then you pull out one and that's the target, so someone gets to have this experience. Anyway, sorry, little editorial. So what is operational? So there must be a human need. Another is it's always precognitive. So no one on the planet knows, or even off planet, no one in space-time, unless they're psychic, knows what the actual question is that you're being asked. So it's not like you're using telepathy. And the reason I do this is because if you're going to be operational, you do not, like, let's say you're in a missing persons case, you do not want to read the detective's mind, because you're just going to spout back all the things the detective already thinks. And that's useless, because the detective is hiring you because what they think is not actually the answer, or they're thinking they'd like to get some other information. So training people to be precognitive means in the future we'll have the answer, go get it now, but don't go around reading other people's minds. And then the last thing is unconditional love. So you wrap the target or the tasking in unconditional love, and you wrap yourself as you're doing the work in unconditional love. So regardless of what the target is, even if you're looking at a perpetrator or something that's really horrific, it allows you to send love to that target or that tasking. And that allows good things to happen, even if, you're looking at an event from the past. It seems to shift things in a positive way and make it more sustainable for the viewers. So that's OPRV. And, the team that I started is now run by Julia Ashley. She's on the IRVA board. And you can read more about our team at intuitiveforecasting.com. So in case you'd like to do that. But OPRV, anyone could do. You just do those three things and then you say you're an OPRV viewer. Or you could go to IRVA and take my many-week class and how to do it also. But you could also just do those three things.
That's awesome. I have one last question for you, and then I know Tyler has something, and then you got to go. Based on your research and in this field and all your many years of research, is telepathy real?
Sure.
That was too simple.
Well, I mean, so first of all, based on the research in the field, even by the year 2000, we knew telepathy was real. It was just not evenly distributed in the population in terms of an innate talent, right? So there was twin telepathy. There's telepathy that's seems to be easier to catch in Guns field experiments among creative people, artists and such. And then recently, even more so like Richard Silberstein's work with monozygotic twins in Australia that recently came out. And then with non-speakers who seem to exhibit two kinds of telepathy. One is this apparent proximity telepathy, where the person that's near them or that they know very well, if they are close to them, or even if they're not close to them, like not home, there's at least anecdotal evidence of telepathy there. And then our team with Jeff Tarrant and Maria Welch and Natalia Meehan and Damon Abraham and others, we have evidence for apparent telepathy at a distance with people that maybe they don't know as well. But that's spotty. And that, because when I say that's spotty, what I'm talking about is the rigorous controlled trial outcome. But during the rigorous controlled testing, what we found with the group of non-speakers we were working with is that need-based spontaneous telepathy overtook the need to do the trial. In other words, our need as researchers was like, please describe this video that someone's sending you. But if there's someone else in the world with a need that they're tapped into, that they're going there.
Mm.
So it's very empathic, and so the spontaneous stuff shows up and seems to show up a lot. Difficult to capture in a controlled setting. And then the other thing I just want to say, and this is from Suzanne Cloris, who did the Extraordinary Project. She's someone else you might consider having on. But one thing that she noticed, she won an award from University of West Georgia, a fellowship to go to their archives and look at Ingo Swann's papers. Mm. And one of the things she said is that Ingo said, in 100% of abduction stories or contact stories with NHI, people talk about telepathic communication with NHI. He's like, he was really struck by that. And so he said, what does this mean? What this means is people have an innate capacity for telepathy that they know how to turn on. Mm. And so that means it's turn-onable. Right? We just don't know how.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a really good point. I mean, if you believe in what Ingo Swann said and you believe in NHI, again, hard to test because you'd want to have an NHI show us, like in a lab, like, can you make this person telepathic? Okay, now switch it off and make them not telepathic. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's maybe in the future.
Oh.
I wonder if anything was done in looking in the free research study into that too. Like they've used a lot of statistics in that. If they looked at how many experiences were telepathic in nature when communicating with NHI. But my last question was just really quickly. You mentioned a book that you had. I think it was like "Have a Nice Disclosure." Can you say is that a new book of yours? Yeah. Can you say maybe
Have a Nice Disclosure? Came out at the end of it. Came out 11/11 of last year. Because of course, and why not? And now there's an audio version that came out in January. It's near and dear to my heart because I feel like after writing multiple books, some scholarly, some not, this book I really said what I wanted to say in a way that I feel like people could hear it. It's dense, it's complex, it's also, I'm told, engaging. It changes people's minds and hearts, which I think is important. I talk a lot about love. I talk a lot about science and technology. But I also talk about my experience in that SOAR program, which was a predecessor, as far as I can tell, looks like a predecessor to GATE, Gifted and Talented Education. Mm. And I think we're just at the very beginning of understanding what was done to a bunch of American and also, by the way, Australian and UK, as far as I know, and I think South African kids. With this program and what was trying to be done. So I think that's something to try to understand further as we try to move towards a more ethical approach to developing psi capacities and psionics. I think we need to understand what was done and why.
Mm. Wow.
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I mean, I'm sad now that I missed the first 10, 15 minutes of this thing.
There'll be more, we'll have you on I have a podcast I'll invite you on.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Good. I'm so game.
Cool.
Julia, I think I really appreciate you, and you by far have been a distant teacher for me. And a mentor, even though we haven't really met in person, but once or twice, but we've had some conversations, and I'm pleased to know that you're helping us usher in the Psi Games and grow it, and you're there to give me advice and other people, all of us advice, and based on the life that you lived and the information that you have. And so I really thank you for that. And we probably need to have Julia on again, huh, Tyler?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm up for it. I really love what you're doing. And I feel like you teach me and you teach a lot of people, Hakeem. And Tyler, I love that you're continuing your work and you're really passionate about it. And thank you both.
Thank you.
Everyone's teaching everyone.
Yeah, that's part of it. Well, thank you, Julia. I appreciate it. And until next time, everyone, we'll see you back here on Psi Games Talk.